Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the lecture on process synchronization in operating system. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the race conditions, critical sections, synchronization using hardware and technique, semaphore technique. Background: process can execute concurrently. So in a system, concurrently more than one process can execute at the same time, and also these processes, they can share the same data and can try to update the data concurrently. I mean, at the same time they can try to update the shared data. So when they try to update the shared data at the same time, the data inconsistency problem can occur, and this data inconsistency problem is called as race condition. So to avoid the data inconsistency, okay, we have to ensure we have to implement something called synchronization, process synchronization, such that a process executes a set of instructions in a specific order, orderly execution of cooperating processes, which you will understand with examples in this chapter. So processes can concurrently run at the same time in a system, and if they share the data and try to update the shared data concurrently, then data inconsistency problem can occur, and that problem is race condition. And there are different techniques are there which can be used to prevent the race condition problem. Now let us discuss the race condition problem using the Java code. This is a class called sequence. It has a member variable counter. Its initial value, let us assume, to be 0, and it has a method, get increment method, and it has a statement counter plus plus. That is, this statement is used to increase the value of the counter by one value. Okay, it is a postfix increment operator, and the value is returned to the caller. So basically it's a very simple function. It has one member variable and has a method, and when this method is called, what happens, this value is updated, incremented by one value. Now so let us assume there are two threads. Already you know the concept of thread. Okay, let us assume there are two threads. Okay, a process has two threads, T1 and T2. These two threads, let us assume they called this method concurrently. Okay, so these two threads, they access this method at the same time. Okay, so let us say the thread 1 is calling this method one time, and thread 2 calling this method one time. So each one time, let us assume they are calling this method. Okay, so what we can understand from this is the T1 and T2, they share this data. they share this data and they try to update this data using this code. Using this code, when they call this method through this particular code, they update this data. So, this particular code which help these two threads to update the value of the shared data, this particular statement we can call it as critical section. Critical section. So, this particular code is a critical section because through this code they access the shared data. Now, T1 is calling this method one time. So, when a thread call this method, what will happen? The value of the counter increases. It increases by how much value? 1. So, initially it was 0. Okay, when thread 1 calls, okay, the value increases from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1, because counter plus plus means counter equal count 0 plus 1. So, that is counter will become 1, correct. Now, second thread T2 also calling this method. So, what happens? Again this statement is executed, the value of the counter increases by another one value. So, from 1 the value updates to 2. So, initially it was 0, then when T1 call this method, the value gets incremented and the value goes from 0 to 1, and the thread, when the thread T2 call, the value goes from 1 to 2. So, now the final value actually it should be 2, okay, because these two threads they have called this method each one time, okay. So, when you print the counter, okay, in the program, finally after these two threads have called these method each one time, when you print this counter value, finally it should be 2, the correct answer should be 2. However, okay, when you implement this sequence class in a multi-threaded program, according to the scenario which I have described now, that is there are two threads calling this method each one time, and after they update call this method, when you display this value counter value, finally you might find that the value is not 2. The actual value should be 2, but however you will not get the correct value. Sometimes you would get 2, sometimes you would get 1, like that. So, suddenly the value goes wrong actually, okay. So, this is the scenario what I have given here. Assume an object sequence class. So, this sequence class okay is object is created for the sequence class. Through that object, the two threads T1 and T2 they call this method get increment method each one time, What would be the value of the counter variable if the initial value was 0? So, the initial value was 0. So, what is the value of the counter? The value cannot be predicted correctly, that is the correct answer. Why? Because as of now there exists race condition. Race condition means when multiple threads they share the data, and if they try to update the shared data concurrently, okay, what happens? The data inconsistency will arise. That data inconsistency is called race condition, that is the value of the counter will go wrong, it will give wrong value. Okay. How come it is possible? How the computer is making such mistake? Actually, this data inconsistency wrong value comes because we have not taken precautions in the program, okay. Actually, we have to, when multiple threads they share the data, and if they try to update the data, this problem, this data inconsistency problem is normal. So, we have to take some precautions in the program. We have to prevent this race condition, okay, using a technique called synchronization technique, that we are going to discuss in this lecture. Okay. Now, let me run this code. Actually we don't expect you to memorize this code. Actually you should understand the concept. Okay, you are not we are not expecting you to memorize each and every line of this program. So just try to understand the code. So this is a sequence class. Here just the variable name is different. In the slide we are using the variable name counter. Here we are using the name next. So this get next method would call the next plus plus statement. It exists in the get next method. It would update the next value by 1. No need to worry about this, just returning the value. So just try to focus here. So this is a sequence class implementation. There are two threads, T1 and T2. These two threads, they would call this method get next each 10,000 times. Each it would call 10,000 times. Already we have discussed, when a thread call this method one time, the value increases by one value. If two threads call each one time, that means 2 times totally, the value would increase by 2. Okay, so now each thread, if they are calling 10,000 times, that means the value of the counter should be moving from 0 to 20,000 totally, because each thread calls 10,000 times. So the total final value of the counter should be 20,000. So here the variable name is next, the value should be finally 20,000. But when I run this program, I am running the program, executing the program. You can see the result what we get actually when we print the when we call the get value method, it would return the next value. The next value, what value returned is 15,518, but the actual value should be 20,000. The correct value is 20,000. Why this data inconsistency is arising here? Why? Because of race condition problem. Okay, we know in this moment we you can understand what is the race condition. Race condition means when application with multiple threads runs, and if these threads share the data, and if they try to update the data concurrently, then the data inconsistency problem arises. Okay, that is called race condition. Now why exactly this race condition problem is coming, that we will discuss now in depth. Okay. So that is what we are going to see. Now you have seen practically what is the race condition. The actual result should be 20,000, but what we get is 15,518. We will solve this problem, okay, little later in the same lecture. So now why this problem is happening, why this race condition problem is happening? Because this single operation counter plus plus, this single execution counter plus plus at the CPU level is divided into 3 operations: load, update and store. This single operation counter plus plus at the CPU level, it would be taking place as 3 different operations, that is load, update and store. So what is load? We have memory. In the memory, when this program is running, please understand, in the program we are initializing the value of counter to 0. Okay, so the counter is equal to 0. This value where it would exist when this process is running. Okay, so when this process is running, okay, initially the value next is equal to 0. This value would be existing in the main memory. Okay, in the main memory. So next is equal to 0, that value would be in the main memory. So from the memory, load the value into the register. So register is the small storage device near the CPU where these values are stored in the registers when any arithmetic operations takes place. So from the memory, the value is loaded into the register. So for example, as far as this example is concerned, counter is equal to 0. So this value 0 for the counter is stored into some register. Okay. So the register would be holding, some register would be holding the counter value. Load means from memory, just load the value into the register. Okay. Now after the value has been loaded into the register, the value has to be updated. What is the exact update operation? Counter plus plus. That means the value has to increase by one value. So in the register, this update operation is taking place. Okay, in the register, the update operation is taking place. Now the value of the counter in the register level is 1. Okay, so let's say counter, okay, is equal to, initially the value was 0 and now the value initially the value was 0 and we increment the counter value by 1. Okay, now the updated value is 1. However, the updated value of the counter still exists, okay, in the register now, not yet updated in the main memory. From the memory, initially the value is loaded into the register, then in the register the update is taking place. What is the update? The value has to be increased by one value. Okay, so initially it was 0 and now it has to be increased by one value. So 0 plus 1, 1. Now what happens? From the register, the value has to be updated into the memory. Load the updated register value into the main memory. Okay, so from the register, the value, what is the updated value? 1. This value has to be, okay, let's say this is the main memory. This is the main memory. Okay, so in the main memory, let's say the counter, okay, is equal to 0 initially. So from there, the load operation taking place. The load operation take this value 0 and put it in the register. So in the register, the update is taking place. Now the store operation, what it does, it takes the updated value, that is 1, and put it back in the memory. So 0 is removed, and now what happens? The counter value becomes 1. So this is how things happen at the CPU level. Okay, load, update and store. So any operation, this simple counter plus plus operation, okay, is divided into 3 operations at the CPU level: load, update and store. Okay, now let us discuss why the race condition problem is happening. When the load, update and store operations take place together for a particular process or for a particular thread, without any context switching, without any interruption, then there will not be any race condition. This 3 operation has to be atomic, atomic. That means they have to take place together without any context switching. You remember in the chapter 4, I thought you we were discussing about the round robin algorithm, preemptive scheduling algorithm. Example, round robin, priority scheduling algorithm. Okay, so in the round robin CPU scheduling algorithm, when the time quantum expires, what happens to a process? The context switching take place. That means the process is removed from the CPU and the CPU is assigned to another process, correct? So a process or thread, if they are running in the preemptive environment, they cannot run continuously. Even though their burst time still not yet finished, they cannot continue the operation together. Okay, so in that circumstance, what happens? If most of the time, what happens, for a thread or for a process, this load, update and store operation will not be happening together. For example, let us say a thread has finished load operation, update operation, but it has not yet finished the store operation. So what happens? Context switching take place. So the CPU is assigned to some other thread or some other process, and this particular process which has been preempted would get the chance after some time, then it would continue the store operation. Okay, because of these reason, when this load and update and store, if they are not taking place together, okay, if they are not atomic, okay, then there is a chance for the race condition problem to happen. Now let me explain this with a trace diagram. Okay, let us say the same example, sequence class. The counter value is 0. A thread T1 and T2 are running and they share this counter. Okay, how they can share the counter? You can see here T1, T2, okay, and you can see how they share. Okay, this I have given. This we are discussing in the lab number 5, I think we are discussing in. So these two threads are running. So let us assume the thread T1 is getting the CPU first and T2 is in the ready queue. It is in the ready queue and the T1 is running now. It is running. So when it is running, it wants to perform the counter plus plus operation. You know, it is split into 3 operation at the CPU level. So this is load operation, that is the counter value is loaded into the register. So register is equal to counter value, that is 0. Then at the register level, update is taking place. Register is equal to register value plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So the load finished, update finished. Okay, so one more operation is still pending, that is store operation. But before that operation is executed for the thread 1, context switching take place. That is the T1 is preempted, taken out from the CPU, and T1 goes to ready state. It is ready state. It is in ready state. Its state changes from running to ready, and the T2 from ready state it moves on to running state. It moves on to running state. Now what happens after the context switching? The T2 is running and T1 is in ready state. Now again for the T2, these operations has to take place, that are load, update and store, right, separately. So load operation, that is load the value of the counter from the memory to the register. Okay, please copy the value of the counter which is in the memory to the register. Now what is the value of the counter? You can say that the value of the counter has been updated to 1. You can say, but please understand, for the thread T1 the value has been updated, but not yet updated at the this value is updated at the register level. It is not yet updated in the memory level. Okay, why? Because it would be updated in the memory level only when the third operation completes for that particular thread, store operation. And here the store operation not yet finished for the thread T1. So for the thread to T2, actually what is happening is it is taking the counter value from the memory, and the memory value is old value, not yet updated. It is taking the old value. Then in the register level, again the update is taking place, 0 plus 1, and before for the second thread, before the third operation, that is the store operation, finishes, what happens? Context switching here, again here context switching. So when context switching takes place, the T2, what happens, it goes from running to ready, and T1 gets the chance again. So for the T1, actually it performs a third operation, that is store operation. So it stores the value which is in the register into the memory. So it cancel the 0 and make the value 1 in the memory. Okay. Now again this process is now terminated. It finished everything, it is terminated. Now what happens? Thread 2 is getting the chance. Thread 2 is what it does, it performs a store operation. So what happens? It will update this value into the memory. So already the value is 1, again it will remove the 1, and again it will put the 1. But what should be the correct value? Actually the value should be 2 actually. When each thread call the counter method, when each thread update the counter variable each one time, okay, the final value should have been should be 2, but here the value what it is seen is 2, which is the value is 1, but the actual answer, the correct answer should be 2. So this is called race condition. Why? You just analyze this trace diagram, you can easily understand why this problem is happening. Because for the thread T1 as well as for the thread T2, the load, update and store operation, they are not taking place together, it is not continuous. Okay. Because of this disruption, break in between, because of context switching, what happened? The race condition occurs. Now now you just see this trace diagram. Here thread 1 is performing the load operation, update, store. Okay, thread 2, load, update, store. Now actually what you are getting is 2, answer is 2, and the correct answer is also 2. So when this load, update and store at the CPU level, if they are together, okay, there will not be any race condition. If they are not together, like in this case, then there will be race condition. Clear to you? Now this program, okay, there is a race condition. Okay, how to solve the race condition we will discuss now. Okay, we have to make some changes in the code. We have to implement something called synchronization, so that this problem of race condition is removed. So what is the critical sections? To prevent the race condition, we must guarantee that certain section of the cooperating programs are not interleaved. The special protected section are termed critical section. So in this program this section is the critical section. Why? Because this is critical section, because this statement, when more than one thread, example T1 and T2, when they update, when they execute this statement and update concurrently in an interleaved manner, the race condition occurs. So such part of the code, that particular part of the code, we can consider it as a critical section. So what is the solution to the critical section problem? Okay. There are many issues to the critical section problem. One of the issue just now we discussed is race condition, and there can be other issues such as starvation, deadlock, live lock, there are many issues which can affect the critical section problem. Now, as of this lecture is concerned, we are focusing on the race condition. One of the solution actually is mutual exclusion. This is the solution which would prevent the race condition. Mutual exclusion. So, what is mutual exclusion? When so, this is the critical section here. So, there are two threads T1 and T2. So, when the T1 is running the critical section, running its critical section, the T2 should not be allowed. T2 should not be allowed. So, only one thread at a time should be allowed to enter its critical section. Very simple example, the same scenario T1, when T1 is running its critical section, T2 should not be allowed, T2 should be blocked. That is, the T1 is accessing get increment method. Same time, and the T2 also tries to access the get increment method, you know, the programming Java virtual machine or any other programming technology should have the mechanism to block this particular thread, second thread T2. It should allow only one thread at a time to go into the critical section, and this concept is nothing but mutual exclusion. Mutual exclusion, allowing only excuse me, allowing only one thread to enter its critical section. Only one process can be executing its critical section at a time. Two processes cannot enter the critical section at the same time. So, this is called mutual exclusion. Okay. Now, so this is the critical section. Why it is critical section? Because this statement allow the multiple threads to share and update common data, update the shared data. It allows this particular statement allows multiple threads to share and update a data, a common data. So, such statement we can consider it as critical section. So, now anything below the critical section, we call it as remainder section. Anything below the critical section, any statement or statements, block of set of statements below this critical section, we call it as remainder section, and any statement above this we call it as entry section. Entry section. So, any statement above this is entry section, anything below the critical section is called remainder section. So, when you want to prevent the race condition problem, okay, as a good programmer, you have to know what is the critical section. So, only when you identify the critical section, okay, you can safeguard the critical section with some synchronization mechanism, so that the race condition problem is resolved. So, entry section, you know what is critical section, just now we discussed. Then exit section. Okay, so anything below the critical section we call it as remainder section, okay, or exit section. Okay, we can call it as remainder or exit section. So, what are the solution to the critical section problem? One is mutual exclusion, that is allowing only one thread to enter its critical section. So, when T1 is executing this statement, this critical section, T2 should not be allowed, it should be blocked. that is called mutual exclusion. Another one is called bounded waiting. So what is this bounded waiting? Let's say this is the entry section. So we have the critical section, then we have the remainder section, and finally exit. Okay. Now let's say there are two threads, T1, T2, T3. So the T1 wants to enter the critical section. Okay, wants to enter the critical section. But what happens? T2 is going to the critical section, then it is coming out of the critical section to the remainder section. Okay, then again it is coming back again T2, then again it is coming to the critical section, then again it is going to the remainder section, again it is coming, T2 is coming, again going to the critical section, but the T1 is just keep waiting, T3 is just keep waiting here. So this is called starvation. Understand? So some threads they are getting the preference, some threads they don't get the preference. Okay, so some threads they just get the chance continuously, they run with the critical section. Other threads they remain in the entry section and they are not able to go into the critical section. So that means these threads they are not able to make progress. They are suffering from starvation. So this second property says, okay, when you implement the synchronization technique, you have to ensure that all the threads they get the equal chance when they want to enter the critical section. So that is called bounded waiting. So bounded waiting says when the T1 is waiting, okay, when the T1 wants to go to the critical section, then there should be limit on other threads like T2 or T3, the number of times they can go to the critical section, there should be limit. You shouldn't allow this to happen, that is T1 is just waiting for long time and other threads like T2 or T3 they are just getting the chance again and again to enter the critical section. This shouldn't happen. There should be a bounded waiting. Okay, there should be a limited waiting. So when a process P1, or we can say T1 also, thread 1, P1, we can use interchangeably. When a thread or process example T1 or P1 ready to go into the critical section, then there must be a bound, there should be a limit and the number of times other threads or other process can enter the critical section before the P1. You understand? So all the threads should be getting the fair chances, equal chances to enter their critical section. Okay. Then the third property that should be implemented to resolve the critical section problem is progress. Okay. So again we have the entry section, then we have the critical section, so we have the remainder section. So that means any process like thread T1, T2, they should go to the critical section. Okay, they should finish the remainder section and eventually they have to exit. So the process, the statements in a thread or in a process, it should be eventually executed and they have to attain the normal termination, not abnormal, normal termination. That is a good property of any process. Okay, so the process when it is running, it should make progress. It should not be blocked in the middle, that is called deadlock. We call it as deadlock. That means a process is waiting for some event to happen and that event will never occur. So what happens, the process cannot terminate naturally. It would be waiting for an event and this waiting is never, it's not going to end. That means the process is not going to make any progress. Okay. So if a process wants to go into the critical section, okay, it should be allowed to go into the critical section. A thread, okay, or a process, if they want to go into the critical section, they should be allowed to go to the critical section. They should be executing all the statement, they should be executing all the statement in the remainder section, and they have to exit. No other code, no other thread which is in the remainder section should be influencing this thread, should be affecting these threads, should not allow these threads, should not stop these threads going into the critical section. A thread is, shouldn't affect the other thread going into the critical section. So, each and every thread should be independent, and they should be allowed to make progress and attain the normal termination. So, this is called progress property. Okay, so this actually I do not want to go into very deep actually. I do not encourage you to go into the deep, which you will see in the concurrent programming. But now what I want you to learn actually is, we discussed this problem. Okay. So, now what is the solution actually? We are discussing about the race condition problem. What is the solution? There are many solutions are there. One of the solution is, in Java is using a word synchronized. So, this is what means synchronization. So, we use a word synchronized keyword before the return type of the method. So, when we do this, what happens? The mutual exclusion is automatically implemented. We discussed mutual exclusion, right? When T1 is going into the critical section, T2 should not be allowed to go into the critical section. Only one thread should be allowed to go into the critical section. You get the point? So, that is called mutual exclusion. So, we implement the mutual exclusion using the keyword synchronized. That means the T2 and T2 threads, they cannot use this method at the same time. So, when the T1 is accessing this method and at the same time, if the other thread T2 try to access this method, then the second thread would be blocked. Okay. So, the basic idea is that only one thread at a time can access this method because of mutual exclusion property, which is implemented through this keyword. Now, let me run this program. Just let us wait for the code to complete. Now, we are getting 20,000 correct answer, because each thread calling the method exactly 10,000 times. Clear? So, the answer is 20,000. Suppose if I remove this, before the implementation of the synchronization, we were getting 15,538, right? Now, we are getting 16. Okay, so still it is a wrong answer. So, let us synchronized, right click. So, now we are getting the correct answer. So, there is no race condition when we implement the mutual exclusion using the synchronized keyword. Race condition problem is removed. So, you can see here we implement the synchronized keyword. Before implementing the synchronized keyword, if you analyze the trace diagram, if you draw the trace diagram, it would be like this. There would be context switching in the middle. The load, update and store, it won't be atomic. it is not atomic, not together. But after implementing the synchronize keyword, it would the trace diagram would change like this. The load, update and store would be atomic, mutual exclusion. So when the T1 is in its critical section, T2 is not allowed to run, it is in ready state. Clear? So this is called mutual exclusion, and it will not allow the race condition to happen. Now let us discuss what is a monitor. A monitor is a high level language construct to make synchronization easier for the programmers. A monitor is abstract data type. In other words, it encapsulates private data with public methods that operate on that data. The methods provided by monitor are guaranteed by the language to operate with mutual exclusion. Only one process thread can be active within a monitor. So no two methods can be executed simultaneously by two different process or threads. So what is a monitor? It is an object actually. In Java, we can implement a monitor in any language, okay, whether Java or Python or C++. It is just an object, imagine as an object which has set of methods. I think at this level you know what is a class, what is an object, what is a method, right? Just imagine a class which has set of methods, and only one thread or only one process can be allowed to access these methods at a time. So no two threads or process can access simultaneously these methods inside the monitor. Okay. So this is for example, this class, this variable is a private, and this method okay, now let me ask you a simple question. I remove this. I ask this to you, is it this class, can we consider it as a monitor? We cannot consider it as a monitor. Why we cannot consider it as a monitor? The monitor should be implementing the mutual exclusion. The monitor class should be implementing mutual exclusion. That means it should be allowing only one thread to be active inside its object at a time. For example, as of this condition, you just understand this getNext method can be accessed by T1 and T2 threads at the same time. It is allowed. There is no restriction, nobody to control. Okay, they T1, T2, if you have more than T1, T2, if you have many threads, T3, T4, all the threads can access this getNext method concurrently at the same time. No issues, nobody to restrict this thing. So a race condition is happening. Okay, so how we can avoid the race condition? So we have to make this class into a monitor. How we can make this class into a monitor? Okay, we have to follow certain rules, certain properties we have to assign to this class. So one property is all the member variables should be private. All the member variables should be private, and method should be public. If not public, make it public and synchronized. Make the methods synchronized. Now what happened? Actually one more thing is there, that is called conditional synchronization, which is beyond the scope of this course actually, which you will be learning in depth in another course called concurrent programming. Okay, condition synchronization. So without that we will implement all the other properties. So member variable is private, methods are public and synchronized. So this class now becomes a monitor. Okay, so when you make this class as a monitor by making the variables private and methods public and synchronized, it implements mutual exclusion. What is mutual exclusion? Only one thread at a time can be active inside its critical section. So if T1 is accessing in a simple way, if you want to understand, just understand like this. If T1 is calling this getNext method, Okay, same time T2, if T2 tries to call this method, then T2 would be blocked. It will not be allowed to enter the critical section. Why? Because this sequence object is a monitor. Why? Variables are private, methods are public and synchronized. So this is what explained in the monitor. Okay, monitor can be implemented using high level languages like C, C++, Python, etc. Okay, in the monitor datas are private, methods are public and synchronized. Okay, and only one thread or process can be active inside the monitor at any time. Two methods cannot be executed simultaneously by two different process or threads at the same time. Now let us discuss, so far what we have discussed is how to implement the synchronization using the software. Other technique is how we can, how the hardware also helps the synchronization concept. Synchronization, how it can be implemented at the hardware level. Before we go into that, we have something more at which we have to complete it. So that's called semaphore. Okay. So now let me show practically, then we will come to theoretical concept, so it's easy for you to understand. So if you ask whether this is the only option through which we can implement the mutual exclusion, we have so many options. So the other option is okay, called semaphore. Okay, I will explain what is a semaphore. Semaphore is a synchronization tool. Semaphore, mutex, new semaphore. The initial value should be the initialization value for the semaphore should be 1 if you want to use a semaphore to implement the mutual exclusion. Mutual exclusion means only one thread is allowed to go into the critical section, right? So semaphore is in this package util.concurrent. It's a class actually. For that we create an object, we are giving some name, you can give any name. The initial value for the semaphore constructor is 1 because we want to use this semaphore to implement the mutual exclusion, so we give the value 1. Okay, then inside the before the critical section, what we do is, in the mutex of semaphore object, we call a method acquire. Then after the critical section, we call a method called release. So we have to just put try catch for the acquire method. Just remove this try catch in your mind. Just think that before the critical section, we call this acquire method in the semaphore object, and after the critical section, we call the release method in the semaphore object. So now when I run this, you can see there is no race condition. So the output is correct without any race condition. So here we have implemented the mutual exclusion using semaphore. So what is a semaphore? Semaphore is a synchronization tool. it has two atomic operations. One is wait and signal. Please understand, in this program we call this acquire method. This is the wait method. Okay, in algorithm we call this as wait method, but when we implement this algorithm using Java, in Java this wait method is called as acquire. Same functionality in Java. We can implement using any programming language, C++ or any language we can implement, but in Java there is a semaphore library class. In that wait method is called as acquire method, and another method is called signal method, is called as release method. Okay, so semaphore is a synchronization tool. It is used for synchronization. We can implement mutual exclusion. We can use the semaphore to control the resources. There are many applications of semaphores, but this chapter 5 in operating system we focus on the mutual exclusion, how we can use semaphore to implement the mutual exclusion. Clear? So it has two atomic operations. One is called wait and another one is signal. So wait in Java we call it as acquire method, and signal we call it as release method. Correct? In Java. Clear? And also in semaphore there is a variable used. You see here we give some value here, semaphore value actually. So it is a we pass this value through the semaphore constructor. So here there is a integer variable in the semaphore tool, and let us call that as s. Semaphore s is an integer variable that can only be accessed. So this value can be accessed through these methods wait and signal. Okay. So basically let me explain this. So in synchronization tool there is a semaphore variable s, and there are two methods. One is wait and another one is called signal. Okay. So for example, let us say there are two threads T1 and T2, and let us say there is a critical section. So this is the critical section. So both the threads they want to go to the critical section, but we don't want them to go together because it would result in race condition. So we want to control that using semaphore. So in semaphore, if you want to implement the mutual exclusion, the semaphore value variable value should be initial value should be 1. If you want to implement mutual exclusion, it should be 1. That is why we give the value 1 here. Okay. What happened? That is my screen. Wait, signal. There are two threads and we have critical section. So now let us say that thread 1 wants to go into the critical section. So what it does, it would call the wait method. It would call the wait method. Okay, when it calls the wait method, what happens? The wait method, it would check what is the value of s. If it is less than or equal to 0, then what it does, it would be in the while loop. Okay, continuous while loop. Okay, it would end up in a while loop. Okay, so while s less than or equal to 0, do. So what this statement means is that, say T1 wants to go into the critical section. So before it goes to the critical section, actually it calls the wait method. In the program, no, I showed you, no, that in Java we call occur method, right? Occur and wait same. So in wait method, what happens? The value of s is checked, whether it is 0 or less than 0. If it is 0 or less than 0, it would end up in a loop. Okay, it would be executing the while loop continuously until the value is equal to 0. But in this case, please understand, the value is not equal to 0, the value is 1 initially. So what happens if the value, please understand, okay, the wait method would be in the while loop only when the value is not when the value is less than 0 or equal to 0. But however, in the initial level, here the s value is 1, while the T1 is calling the wait method, the value is 1. So when the value is 1, what it does, the wait method, it would reduce the value s is equal to s minus 1. So s from 1 it moves to 0, it goes to 0, because the T1 has called the wait method. When the T1 called the wait method, the value of s was 1. So what happened, since the s value is not equal to 0, since s value is not less than 0, what happened, the s value is reduced by one value, s is equal to s minus 1. So s will become 0. And now what happened, T1 will go to the critical section. So T1 is in the critical section. So while the T1 is in the critical section, please understand, the s value has changed to 0. From 1 it has changed to 0. Now the T2, when it wants to go into the critical section, this will take place first, this will take place second. When the T2 call the critical section, wants to enter the critical section, it also would call the wait method. When it call the wait method, please understand what is the value of s. The value is 0. If the value is 0, please understand, s value will not reduce. The s, what will happen, the T2 thread would be entering the while loop continuously. It would be in the while loop continuously until the value is equal to 0 or until the value is less than 0. Here the value is equal to 0, right? So until the value is equal to 0, the T2 cannot come out of the while loop. The T2 would be inside the while loop running continuously, and it cannot go to the critical section. It would be in this block. Okay, so T2 is blocked here. It is continuously executing the while loop, whereas the same time T1 is in the critical section. T1 is in the critical section, same time when the T1 is in the critical section, the value changes from 1 to 0. Okay. Now when the T2 call the wait method to enter the critical section, while the value is 0, what happens, T2 is blocked in the while loop. Okay. Now what happened, the T1 will come out of the critical section. When it come out of the critical section, it will call the signal method. It would call the signal method. When it call the signal method, what the signal method would do is just s is equal to s plus 1. It would increase the value of 1. Okay, so T1, when it finishes the critical section, when it goes to the remainder section or the exit section, please understand, it would call the signal method. In the signal method, there is operation that would increase the value of s. S is equal to s plus 1. So when the value of s is 0 now the value will become 1. The value will become 1. And also please understand, when the T1 is going, it is making the s value 0 and going to the critical section. When it is coming out of the critical section, it is making the value 1 from 0. Okay, it is changing the value again to 1. Okay, when the value changes to 1, the T2 thread, which is in the wait block, it can come out of the wait block, while block, and it can go to the critical section. After the critical section also, it will it will make the value 0, go to the critical section, and then when it comes out of the critical section, again it would increase the value of s to 1. So the very basic idea, students don't need to get confused. Both the threads, before they go to the critical section, they have to call the wait method. So when they call the wait method, the value of s reduced by one value. Clear? So for example, T1, when it goes to the critical section, call the wait method, it changes the value from 1 to 0 and it goes to the critical section. So when the T2 comes, when the value is 0, it is stuck in the while loop. It is not allowed to go into the critical section. Now the T1, which is in the critical section, it will come out to the exit section. It will call the signal method. The value of s will increase to 1. Okay. Now the T2, which is in the while block, it will come out of the while block. Why? Because the value of s1 changed from 0 to 1. Then it will call the wait method. Again, it will make the value from 1, it will change to 0, it will go to the critical section and it will come out of the critical section, it call the signal and change the value from 0 to 1. Okay. So by this way, the semaphore is used to implement the mutual exclusion. So this is what explained here. So no need to focus in this. Let us focus our lecture on mutual exclusion, because some advanced things which you will be discussing in the concurrent programming. So you can ignore this part. So when you want to use a semaphore for mutual exclusion, the initial value should be 1. Okay, please, you have to understand there can be a lot of multiple choice questions based on this scenario. Okay. So before the critical section we call the wait method, after the critical section we call the signal method. Okay, this is algorithm, and here I show the exact implementation using Java. You can remember any one. Okay, it's up to you. So semaphore is initialized to 1. Before the critical section, wait method is called. After the critical section, signal method is called. Here also semaphore, the value is initialized to 1. Before the critical section, occur method, same like wait method, is called. After the critical section, release method like signal method is called. This part also you can ignore. This is advanced topic. This we will cover in the concurrent programming. So I will remove this. Okay, so you are seeing the mutual exclusion, okay, using semaphore here. Now we shall go, just let me give some highlight here. What's exactly happening is, here we use a while loop. So the thread is blocked in the while statement. When it is in while statement, what happens? It would consume the CPU operation. It is running actually, it is not in waiting state. So to overcome this problem, wasting the CPU time, we introduce a queue here, queue concept. Okay, so no need to worry, that we will see in the concurrent programming course. Next concept is hardware synchronization. If it is a single processor system, okay, you can implement the synchronization in the following way. You know what is a single processor system, multi-processor system, right? In the single processor system, okay, we can implement the mutual exclusion using there is something called interrupt concept. Interrupt means signal to the CPU. Whenever there is, when you press the keyboard or mouse, what happens? A signal goes to the CPU, and that is called interrupt. Or you are running a program, in that program a exception is occurring. So when exception occurs, for example invalid memory access, immediately it would send a signal to the CPU, that is called trap. So error condition from a program application, it's called trap. Okay, so when there is a trap or interrupt, the signal will go to the CPU. When the signal goes to the CPU, it would halt all its operation and it would address the interrupt. Once the interrupt is addressed, resolved, then it would resume the operation which it was performing before earlier. Okay, so when you want to perform any critical section, okay, you can disable the interrupt and go to the critical section, and after the critical section is finished, okay, for a particular thread, then you can enable the interrupt. By this way we can allow only one thread or process to enter the critical section. By disabling the interrupt, we are not allowing the context switching to take place. For the context switching to take place, the interrupt is very much essential. For example, in the round robin algorithm, when the time quantum expires, okay, interrupt goes to the CPU, okay, telling the CPU that the time quantum has been expired for a specific process. Okay, or yeah, when a high priority process comes while the low priority process is running, okay, then the preemption takes place. For that also you need interrupt. Okay, so if you don't want context switching to take place, you want to allow a particular thread or process to continuously run in the critical section to avoid the race condition, you can disable the interrupt, and after the critical section is completed by a specific process or thread, you can enable. But however, in the modern day multiprocessor system, this scenario is not applicable. Okay, so we need not worry about that. But nowadays the modern applications, programming languages like Java, Python, etc., they make use of the hardware level synchronization which is available. Okay, so they can be called as test and set or compare and exchange. So sequence of machine instructions without any interruption are called atomic operation. Example, compare and exchange or test and set algorithms. So one hardware solution is just to disallow interrupts, which we discussed before, but this is feasible on which is not possible on multiprocessor system. This already we have discussed this. Another hardware solution is to provide special atomic operations that guarantee a sequence of machine instructions will be executed without any interruption. Example, test and set algorithm or compare and exchange algorithm. Let us discuss one such algorithm, test and set. The problem issues with this synchronized keyword or semaphore, the problem is when we implement the mutual exclusion using semaphore or a synchronized keyboard, what happens is that it affects the concurrency of the thread execution or process execution. When actually the concurrency means multiple process or multiple threads should be running at the same time as much as they can. Okay, so it improves the throughput, it improves the concurrency, it efficiently makes use of the CPU time, etc. But what happens when you implement the mutual exclusion? If you implement the synchronization using these techniques like semaphore or synchronized keyword, some threads are allowed to run and some threads are not allowed to run. We are blocking some threads. We are making the threads to wait. We call that explicitly as blocking the threads. For example, when you block the thread and just you allow only one thread to run, then it affects the concurrency. It affects the real purpose of the concurrent programming. You get the point, which is the concurrency is widely used in the operating systems. The synchronization techniques are widely used in the operating systems. So many processes, so many threads are running concurrently, and in order to avoid the race condition, you implement the synchronization technique. Once again, this synchronization technique should be very efficient, should not affect the concurrency of the operation. Is it clear? So this semaphore technique as well as the synchronization keyword which we discussed in Java, they have some drawbacks actually. They have some drawbacks. So to overcome the drawbacks, these techniques like test and set algorithms and compare and exchange algorithms, which are implemented at the hardware level, are more efficient, and it improves the concurrency. It is the efficient way of implementing the concurrent programming actually at the operating system level. Okay, let's see how it works actually. Let's say there is a address V, and this address V has a value A. Okay, and there are two threads, let's say T1 and another thread T2. Now the T1 read this data from this memory location V, the value is A, it is reading the value A and it is doing some operation plus plus, or it is doing minus minus. Okay, it is doing some arithmetic operation so that it gets a value B. A is changed to B. Okay, for example, let's say B is equal to plus plus A or minus minus A. Clear? So the thread T1 read some value A, read value A from the location memory location B, and it performs some operation plus plus or minus minus, so that it gets a new value B. B is obtained from A by performing some operation. Okay, now the T1 wants to store this value into the memory location. When it tries to store the value, it would test what is the current value in the memory location V. If the value is A, that is if the V has the old value, if this value, let's say, if this value, let's say this is A, okay, let's say A dash. So the A and the A dash, if they are same, if they are not changed, then what it would this algorithm does is it would store the please remember the thread 1 doing some operation getting value B, right? It wants to store the B in the memory location V, but before that it just checks what is the current value in the memory location. Let's say it's reading the value, let's say A dash. So it would compare the A and A dash, the input value what it has taken before, okay, A, and the currently existing value A dash, are they same? It will check. If they are same, okay, please understand, if A and A dash are same, then it would store the B, it would remove the A, and it would store the value B in the memory location. It would store the value B in the memory location. Clear? Okay, so otherwise another scenario is now before the T1 store the value, already let's say the T2 has removed the A and it has updated the value to, let's say, C. It has updated the value to C. The T2 has already updated the value from A to C before the T1 store the B into the memory location V. T2 already has updated, let us assume like that. Now the T1 is coming, it has finished the calculation, so it is checking what is the value in the V. Let's say the value is C here, right? The value is C. The value is C. Is it same as the input value? Its input value? It is not same. It implies that another thread has changed the value in the location V. So what it does, it would cancel the operation. T1 will cancel the operation. It would just discard the result B. Then what it does, it would read the C. It would read the C and repeat the operation. T1 would repeat the operation with the new value in the memory location B. Why it is not storing the B in the location B? Because before it stores the result into the location B, some other thread, let us say T2, has already changed the value from A to C. You understand? So the result B which it has calculated, T1 has calculated, is not relevant to the C. Actually it was relevant to A, but it is not relevant to C. So when the memory location is having the C, okay, if the T1 stores the B into the location B in place of C, then it would create race condition. So in order to avoid the race condition, what the T1 is doing, it discard its operation, it would read the new value C and repeat the operation. Okay, so this is how the test and set method functions. So read a value A from the location B, do some operation plus plus or minus minus, so that you get a new value B. Then the thread would try to store the B into the location B. It would store the B into the V only if V has the older value A. If V has the older value A, then put the value B in the location B. Else, suppose if the V has some other value other than A, then cancel the operation, retry the operation again with whatever current value in the V. Then finally whatever value in the V, return that value. So this is how the test and set algorithm functions. Here you can see even multiple threads, even if they share the memory location B, they can update the value V concurrently, and still they can avoid the race condition. There will not be any race condition. And also here there is no blocking business, like there is no mutual exclusion here, like when one thread is running, other thread is blocked. That things not happen here. Why? Because test and set logic is implemented in such a manner that multiple threads, they can run concurrently at the same time, but still avoid the race condition. Okay. So same thing explained actually here. So you can just try to understand this algorithm. This is enough. Actually, if you want to gain more knowledge in this, you can explore atomic integer class in Java, so which uses these hardware level synchronization algorithms, which has been implemented using these algorithms. So if you are using atomic integer, then there is no need to implement the mutual exclusion concept using semaphore or synchronized code or re-entrant lock. There are many ways by which we can implement mutual exclusion. So with this I conclude this lecture. Thank you very much.